we're off and running on the Krug Show, July the 20th, a week before training camp 2023. Hope everybody's having a great day. It is a warm evening here on the West Coast. Welcome to the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show, brought to you by Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out. 2 locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. Open 7 days a week now in both spots from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. or until they run out. That is the key, and they do run out. Welcome to the Krug Show. Larry Krueger, Vish-Kumaran, Jay Ness, J Nay underscore LSS.
That
Jesse
one got you
Naylor.
tongue-tied, didn't it?
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm Ron Burgundy. He'll read whatever's on the screen. Be careful what you put on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. Jesse Naylor, Vish-Kumaran, myself, Larry Krueger. Hope everybody's having a great day. Guys, good to see you. I took a week. I went to the beach. Jesse was in Costa Rica for a few weeks, or for a week a few weeks ago. But man, I'm back, and training camp starts.
Going on there.
I don't know about a tan, but I definitely have. I got the peel and the burn. The peel and the burn and the skin cancer. It's all coming. I am grinding today. Callie Young says Larry's grinding today. Today is a big day in my channel because we reached 20,000 subs today. And didn't think it was going to happen, but it happened. I thought it would happen, but I just didn't think it would happen quite as, I think we finished the off season. We went into the off season with like 11,000 or 12,000. So we've almost doubled in the off season, which that I'm excited about. But training camp is getting ready to roll starting next week. And guys, 2 of my favorites here to talk Niners with. Where do you guys want to start? We can start in any number of areas tonight.
Larry, you lead us, man. There is
anywhere.
There's a lot to talk about. You know what? I actually want to talk about this sunburn you have. That's where I want to start. I'm just joking.
Seriously,
I like the shirt, though.
You like that? The Krug Show
shirt? Yeah. It's my second favorite shirt I've seen you wear. The first one is the Wilt Chamberlain Warriors, jersey.
Stop that one. You're never going to see that again. Never going to see that again.
Hey,
I never should have taken that picture.
We're doing this show every week on Thursday, right? And we're rotating.
Right.
So 1 week it's going to be here. 1 week it's going to be on Jesse's channel. 1 week it's going to be on my channel. You best believe every time we have that show on Thursday on my channel, the thumbnail will have Larry Krueger in his Wilt Chamberlain jersey looking as good as ever.
Oh, my God. People are like, I seen that. Great. Yeah, great. That's all I need. All right, let's start with a couple things. One, I'm one guy that I've been trying to get on the show is Jeff Christensen, and I discovered that he followed me on Twitter, and so I reached out to him, and here he is. I haven't been able to connect with Jeff Christensen, but Trey's been working with Jeff Christensen, and I got a chance during vacation since my kid's apartment didn't have television or cable, but he did have Netflix. So I watched all of that quarterback show with Cousins and Mariota and maybe most importantly Mahomes. And I don't know. I just feel really good about what Trey Lance got done with Jeff Christensen. Christensen is maintaining that we are going to see a different version of Trey Lance in training camp this year than we saw a year ago. And I kind of think he's going to be right about that, simply because what Trey reminded me of in minicamp was a lot of what Brock reminded me of in minicamp a year ago. He mastered every drill. He seemed totally calm. He's in tune with his receivers. He knows the tendencies of his receivers. And I see a more comfortable, a calmer, a more knowledgeable, a better mechanically driven Trey Lance. And I see Trey as quite a bit improved, and I think we're on the verge of seeing it. What do you guys think? Is that too pie in the sky, too glowing, too positive to start?
I don't think so. But I'm going to bring it down a level just because I think the most important part of the quarterback show is everybody falling in love with Kirk Cousins, the future 49er quarterback. I'm only half joking, but
it's funny, Jesse. I went the other way. I looked at that show, and my takeaway was this guy's old. This guy's broken down. I knew Kirk Cousins was a good dude. I've interviewed him a couple times. He's a great guy. Nobody's ever told me any. I knew he was a good guy, but to me, when he was openly whimpering in that Buffalo game, and it's like, who am I to make fun of him? I'm sitting here in a very comfy, cozy studio. Nobody's hitting me, but to me, my takeaway from Cousins' portion is good guy, but his body is starting to be beat up, and if the Niners have to go to him in the future, that will be a bad, bad thing.
Dude, you might go viral tonight because of that sound.
Yeah, somebody's definitely clipping that one up. No doubt about it. We need you on Twitter. Somebody clip that up. It's going to be good. But yeah, I half joke, but I do know that there is still a love affair with Kyle Shanahan and Kirk Cousins. Let's hope that one of these two quarterbacks between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, one of them shows out and becomes the guy. So we don't even have to talk about Kirk Cousins next offseason. That being said, you talked about Trey Lance and Jeff Christensen.
Right.
What really sold me, and I don't know if you were able to catch this, Larry. I'm not posting on Twitter really, so you may not have came across it on my channel, but there was a Dallas Cowboy content creator, huge Dallas Cowboy content creator, by the way, goes by Law Nation, has a ton of subs, kills it with the Cowboys content. But he was at a sports event, and at this sports event, he's interviewing a quarterback / wide receiver trainer. And this gentleman's very plugged in. His best friend is an NFL player. Talked about that. And they asked him at the tail end of the interview, they were asking him a lot about Dak Prescott because he's worked with Dak Prescott. He's worked with Patrick Mahomes as well. And at the very end, they said something about accuracy and can it be fixed? And he basically shut down the whole interview and goes, oh, yeah, my guy, Jeff Christensen, is the best in the world. You absolutely, if you work with him, you can fix everything. In fact, let me tell you about Trey Lance and the 40-day transformation I've seen from him. Completely different player. And that's basically where the interview ends. Good news is I know Law Nation's brother, his twin brother. And he told me behind the scenes that Law Nation and that gentleman continued to talk to each other off camera. And he couldn't stop talking about how well Trey Lance was playing in those whatever, closed scrimmages, things that they were doing, closed throwing sessions. And he said, I'm not calling him Patrick Mahomes, certainly not doing that. But every throw that Patrick made, Trey Lance can do it also. And I'm very excited about his future. So take that for what it's worth. But this is somebody that is working with Mahomes, working with Dak, knows Jeff Christensen, was on a Dallas Cowboy channel and went out of his way to praise Trey Lance. So that got me excited.
I'm more excited, and maybe I'm more excited about Mahomes. The fact that after watching the quarterback thing on Netflix, just getting a glimpse into what a great competitor Mahomes is, it's like, I felt like last summer, guys, watching Trey, he tried to make every throw that he made in camp out of the same arm angle. And it's like, I'm throwing the way I throw. But in reality, when you get in the game, you might have to flip it. You might have to backhand it. You might have to shovel pass it. You may have to sidearm it. And it really comes down to not just your throwing motion, but just you got to do whatever it freaking takes to move the chains. It's the NFL. And it's not going to go according to plan. It's going to be, you're going to have to go off schedule. The entire thing is what you do off schedule as a quarterback. And I just think that being around Mahomes and that mindset of, you know what, we're getting it done any way it has to get done, I think is where I want to see Trey mentally. Is like, he's got he's got enough here, and he's got enough here. It's not about smarts or arm strength or mechanics. To me, it's about resourcefulness and just do whatever you need to do to keep your team on the field, to extend drives. If that means you dodge 2 defenders and dive head first, then you dodge 2 defenders and you dive head first. I don't want to see, the same motion and, I just throw it the same way and it got tipped. He had more passes tipped than Purdy, and he's a bigger guy. So I want to see him just, I know we used to have, when I played basketball in high school, it was like, learn it. We had a coach who was like, learn it, memorize it, and forget it. In other words, we have sets, we have plays, we want to run our sets, but we're not beholden to our sets. Let's play basketball, right? And let's not forget that playing basketball supersedes whatever our play call was. So it's not about running the play or carrying out the play or whatever. It's about do whatever you need to do to complete the pass, make the play, pick up the yards, get the firsts, get the touchdowns. And I think that's what defines Mahomes. And if any of that rubs off on Trey, I think that's what I'm hoping. That's my big hope for the whole triumvirate of. I'm not saying that Christensen's not valuable. I think he is, but I think being around Mahomes is just as valuable. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen a lot of, I remember when Solomon Thomas worked out with Aaron Donald before the 2019 offseason, right? And they both posted that picture. And Aaron Donald looked as shredded as can be, and Solomon Thomas's body looked really good. And people were like, oh, look, because Aaron Donald at that point, I think, was coming off of 2 straight Defensive Player of the Years. And people were like, oh, look, this is one of the greatest defensive tackles ever. Like, this is going to rub off on Solomon Thomas. Solomon Thomas proceeded to be a backup player for the entirety of that season. I don't want to compare Trey Lance and Solomon Thomas, but I bring that example to say that I've seen this kind of pattern every offseason with a variety of different players where I know better, I guess. I don't know better, but I guess I find it difficult to become very excited and enthusiastic until I get to visualize it. Luckily for you guys will see it much earlier than me. My first look at it will be in preseason. You guys are going to be watching it all through training camp, but I need that visual confirmation. Now, in regard to your earlier point, I do think Trey Lance, there's going to be growth. There's going to be a difference, right? We've already seen the start of that this offseason. Larry, you were at camp. There were a lot of variety of different people at camp who've already mentioned that, a lot of his setup on how he's throwing the ball looks different, right? But I think even with that, I think that there's growing pains that he needs to do while playing that aren't just going to be skipped. And that's where I think sometimes the conversation of his improvement gets a little bit confusing for me. Because I think even though he's improved and I think he's going to be a better player, I don't doubt both of those things. I still think he needs the time to play. Like, I don't think that anything is going to be able to skip that part of his development, right? Mahomes is really the only quarterback that I can think of that just came in 1 year, sat, and then the first year there was no growing pains. It was 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. And, he might be the best quarterback we have ever seen. He might be the ultimate outlier here. But generally we see, that's why, Larry, you bring up the different Hall of Famers that you've compared Trey Lance's initial statistical output to, right? Jesse, you talked about how you stuck by Josh Allen early when people were already writing him off because there was a growth that he needed to go through. And I think Trey Lance, can improve his fundamentals, and that will facilitate a mechanical improvement and make him a better player. But at the same time, I think we were talking about the rawest quarterback ever when we were talking about him coming out of college. And 3 years of not playing in the NFL, as good as he can become at his fundamentals, and I don't doubt that he has worked so hard to improve and he's going to be a better player, I still don't think that that's going to be able to overcome I think that ultimately that experience factor in him not being able to play still stunts how much he can grow within even an offseason, right? Because usually people grow from what they see and what they do, right? Like, that first year gives them an idea of what they need to grow to into that second year. He hasn't even gotten his feet wet on what he can and can't do on an NFL field against NFL players week in and week out. He doesn't know what it's like to be 8 weeks into the year and his body's banged up and he has to play through all of that. Like, he hasn't been able to have any of those experiences because of injury. And as much as we keep talking about growth and development, it becomes difficult for me to talk about because I think he still needs, as much as he can grow at throwing and his fundamentals, he still needs to go through that entire full grind of a season as the starting quarterback so that he can get that experience, because he hasn't had that experience in 4 years. He's had it one time in 5 years.
I think that's a great point, Vish. You and I talked about this. I don't know if it was on camera or off camera when we did a show the other day, and I couldn't agree more. And I think all three 49er quarterbacks are a little bit behind the 8 ball as far as growth for different reasons. Obviously, you broke down Trey Lance, and I think you did it beautifully, so I'm not going to rehash that. But Brock Purdy also hasn't really had an offseason. This is his first full offseason to be the guy and to take over. And the first offseason is not one where you're going to be learning a whole bunch as far as your full development, because you're going through a draft process. You're trying to make a team. It was a whole different thing that he went through. This offseason was supposed to take what was put on film, make those adjustments, make those improvements, and do that through repetition, work, what have you. And that was taken away from him because he's having to rehab. And then you've got Sam Darnold, who is the veteran of the group, but he hasn't been in the system. So he's trying to learn the system. So for one reason or another, all three quarterbacks have something working against them that I think early on, whoever starts may struggle because of that.
Well said.
Well, not to mention that, whoever starts gets the Steelers on the road in week 1. And you guys saw the record. I think they're like 8-1 when the first game of the year is at Heinz Field. And they're like 13-2 or something like that in week 1 overall. So they come firing out of the gate and they get a win. And
remember what happened to Joe Burrow week 1 last year, how bad he looked.
Allen the year before that at home.
Yep.
So Shanahan did an interview, I guess, with somebody and said that he's not going to name a starting quarterback, or at least not right away. And that probably makes sense, right? I mean, why would you name a starting quarterback in this situation? Start camp and let's see where everybody is. Are we going to find out right away? Like, is there a chance that the 49ers announce, I don't know, Tuesday, that Brock's on the PUP list? Do you guys expect that? What do you expect we're going to hear from them right out of the chute with Brock? Or do you expect him to be a full go? I mean, it seems like every option is available still.
Yeah, I think every option's available. I would be shocked if he's a full go or on the PUP. I don't think either one of those is going to happen. I think that he's probably 2 weeks away from being ready to go. It's not an advantage to name a starter now, especially because we don't know for sure if Brock's going to be there. I have a feeling that these open practices, you, Larry, you may see it because you have access that we don't, but I have a feeling that these open practices, we're not going to see Brock Purdy at all other than throwing on the sideline a little bit. That's my gut feeling. I still think he's probably going to be ready for week 1. I think we're trending towards that, but I don't think he'll be put on the PUP either. Not that if he is, it doesn't necessarily mean anything other than they can keep him there if they're worried about going into week 1. But I don't know. I think he's going to be ready mid to early August, and they're just going to stand pat with him.
Right. In 2019, Weston Richburg was taken off the PUP the Wednesday before they played at Tampa Bay Sunday. And I think he was coming off a torn quad. He tore his patella later in the year to end his career. But that's a possibility where he could come in and start and come in fresh. And Weston Richburg actually played well through the first part of the season. And that was a shocking thing for a guy that was basically dry because he didn't do anything but rehab the entire offseason. Another thing on the Pittsburgh thing, by the way, guys. So I just had to run to ChatGPT and ask them what's going on. And so according to ChatGPT, since this data stopped since 2021, ChatGPT let me know that. But Mike Tomlin is 11-2 as a home underdog in his
Wow.
career up till 2021. And mind you, the Steelers have been good in the entirety of Mike Tomlin's career. So think about how good the teams they would be playing would be to come into Heinz Field as a home underdog. They're 11-2. Who do you think is going to be favored week one? I guarantee you the Niners are going to be favored pretty decently large. For Niners fans that like to bet, Steelers might be some free cheese week one.
Look at that. Vish is already getting into the gambling aspect of this thing.
Hey, we're at Picking a Pickle. We gotta get a gambling sponsor here too.
Well, I'll tell you, I can't announce it today, but we have a gambling sponsor that will be part of the Krug show this season. Not quite ready to announce it yet, but the ink is almost dry. Let's just say that on the contract. Okay, one of the comments that caught my attention. Alex Smith was up in Tahoe. I love Tahoe. Have you guys been to Tahoe, by the way?
Unfortunately, no. I once did a show with Grant while he was in Tahoe.
But Jesse, you have been, huh?
Yes, I have.
Tahoe weather in the summer is just absolutely awesome. I mean, it's just beautiful. The water's freezing because it's all snow runoff. And it's about 85 degrees, maybe 90 tops. But then the lake is so freaking cold that it kind of drops the entire temperature. And if you play golf, you can hit, it's an altitude, so you can hit it for miles, and the sky's blue and the trees are green. And it's like you can always find your ball. And it's a great spot. But they had the American Century golf tournament, and Alex Smith was up there. And he did an interview with Matt Mayoko. And I thought his comments on the Niner quarterbacks were like exactly how I feel. Now, you could also say, man, he was overwhelmingly, glowingly positive. But maybe that's just how I feel right now about the Niner quarterbacks with camp starting coming up here. He's like, in the end, quarterbacking, certainly there's a level of accuracy, but it's really, he says, but it's really processing. It's really between your ears. You've got to be able to process a lot fast, and there's not a great way to quantify that. And then he goes on to say, I think Brock showed he's got it right between the ears. It's not too big for him. This is a guy I know didn't get many reps in training camp. He finally got back up to number 2 after the Lance injury. So he's running scout team. You're still not getting a lot of reps. And then to step in and just operate the way he did, it wasn't too big. You could see him dial in. And I know that in that system, there's a lot on the quarterback's plate from a processing standpoint. And I think he showed enough that absolutely he's got it. And again, height, 40, arm strength, that stuff really is secondary at the NFL level. And I think he's got the things that you're looking for to win sustainably. And he basically emphasizes accuracy, processing, and timing as the 3 traits. I think that comment flies right in the face of the people who are saying that, well, yeah, Brock was good. Yeah, Brock was this, but it ain't sustainable, and it won't be sustainable. Alex says it is sustainable, and that this guy has the accuracy, the processing, and the ball comes out on time, and he thinks it's sustainable. That's what he said about Brock. And then when he said about Trey, he said, I still love Trey's future. I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's a great kid that works really hard. He was so young. He was 20 years old when he got drafted. His college experience was so unique. He's battled some injuries. So for him, he just needs to block out the noise, block out the distractions, and continue to go to work and just become the player he wants to be and work towards that. And that's hard. That's not easy to do, especially as a young kid. I think that's spot on. That's how I feel about Trey as well. He had a unique college experience. He's very inexperienced coming out. And I just think that, the people that are sitting here going, he's a bust. Really? I mean, you're going to go there 4 games in? I realize it's year 3, and I know we're impatient, and I know this is a now culture, but he redshirted a year, he got hurt a year, and now this is year 3. If you were saying this a year from now, even that seems to me would be a little bit premature. But Alex kind of crystallizes it in that he thinks that Brock's real and what he did last year was sustainable. And he thinks Trey he's still got a very optimistic bend on Trey. Now, maybe that's something you say with the cameras on or you say for effect, but Alex Smith has made an awful lot of money. He can kind of say what he wants. He's not beholden to anybody, really. What do you guys think of those comments? To me, that's exactly how I feel about these quarterbacks. I think Brock is impressive, and I think it's sustainable, and as long as the elbow doesn't diminish the arm strength, and that's a big question. But I think the people chanting Trey's a bust, it's salacious, and it gets people to turn their head, but I don't know that's – I think that's really, really premature. What do you guys think of Alex's comments?
Right now, Krug?
What's that?
You got a kid studying for the SAT right now?
Why?
Salacious?
Yeah, you like that?
I like it.
Yeah, I could go perpetually piquant. I could, I'll bust out the goddamn thesaurus on you at a moment's notice.
I didn't mean to cut off your question. Go ahead.
By the way, Ron Holder throws some cash. He says, "Thank God for my man Vish, the voice of reason." And then 49er Daddy says, "Anyone else notice how much Andy Reid let his team have input?" Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting.
I think that's a really good topic. That's a really good topic.
We should talk. We should hit that one later. Well, what do you guys think about Alex? Because I mean, I could point to it and say, yeah, there could be other people who go, you know what, he's just being overly positive and he just doesn't want to rip anybody. He's not going to rip anybody. What's your guys' takeaway? How authentic was that comment?
Yeah, I mean, I look at Alex Smith as a pretty authentic person. I also don't think he's going to go out of his way to rip anybody.
Sure.
I mean, shocker, ex-pro quarterback has good things to say about other quarterbacks, especially when that ex-pro quarterback had many years before they were established in this league. So I don't think somebody like that, who was written off, I'm sure many times early on, or felt written off many times, is going to write off anybody that's 23 years old, 22 years old, even 25 years old, because of what he went through. So he's going to have optimism in anybody that he sees the littlest bit of talent in, I imagine. So I do believe that's what he thinks of the situation. I think he was very candid in that situation. And I do tend to agree with most of what he said. I just, after listening to that and then listening to Steve Young, it's clear that they're just not going to say anything bad about any of the quarterbacks. They're just not going to. And that's okay.
They're neither are known to be big rippers, but there are NFL people that have not necessarily sung Trey's praises. There have been NFL people that, now a lot of them are more reporter types than player types for sure. But Schlereth made it seem like, Trey's like the ink was dry on Trey's career story, and like it was like he was sentenced to it ain't gonna work. So he on some level, as a former player, is buying into this ain't the guy, which to me seems very premature. Bish, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that writing off Trey Lance is premature. But I also think that Alex Smith's outlook was simply the most positive outlook you can have on the 49ers quarterback situation. If you want to look at the 49ers quarterback situation and say, I want to be optimistic about this quarterback situation, that's what you would say. And at this point, I mean, we can either be pessimistic about it or we can be optimistic about it. We don't really know what's going to happen. So I think it's a completely fair and valid take. I don't know if it necessarily is the correct one here. Nobody knows what's actually going to end up being correct, but Smith really has to pick a choice. He can either be positive about the Niners room or he can be negative. And like Jesse says, he has other reasons to be positive. And I think that everything he said positively was accurate, right? Like he didn't say even though he talked positively about them, he wasn't excessive or effusive in his praise. And he wasn't saying anything that was incorrect about either quarterback. So I think that's where what he said was very pleasant, because I think there's been a decent amount of misinformation in how the 49ers quarterback position has been talked about maybe since the beginning of the Shanahan era. And that's frustrated a lot of 49ers fans.
I don't know if you heard the Steve Young interview, but
I've more read some excerpts. I haven't really seen the interview in its entirety. Have you seen it?
I have, and his was interesting because much like Alex Smith, he praised the heck out of Brock Purdy. I think he actually did a good job of praising all three. But one thing he did at the end was basically pull out the tablecloth from underneath the dishes because he starts talking about elite quarterbacks and how that is the way of the NFL.
Here's
And
the
unless-
quote. Here's the quote, just so
Yeah.
people. He says, "Do we have a quarterback that can match those 4 or 5 guys that can go light it up with their arms
Yep.
and go get those yards with their legs in a big, huge moment?" Young asked during the latest edition of his podcast with Mayoko. Is that what
Yeah.
you're referring to, Jesse?
Yep, exactly. So he basically goes on to talk about how elite quarterbacks are the reason you win, especially in today's game, and you have to be able to match those guys and go score for score with them. And I know that a lot of people don't like the delivery, maybe, of a content creator or somebody that might question if the 49ers have that guy on the roster currently, or if Brock Purdy is that guy. But he basically said what everybody's thinking, which is all of the talent on this team is great. That's awesome. Talent for talent, the 49ers match up. But do they match up where it matters most? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. And if they don't, they're not going to win a ring. And that was his stance.
Yeah, he's not wrong, right? I mean, we've talked about this ad nauseum. This is the exact topic. And then every year the Niners get close and we say, oh, never mind. I changed my mind. They're going to do it this year. They can do it with Jimmy Garoppolo. I changed my mind in 2021. Like, oh, look. And lo and behold, what happened? Jimmy G did what Jimmy G does. And this year it was different circumstances, but it was the same result, right? Ultimately, it was the quarterback getting injured rather than the quarterback being injured and playing poorly. But ultimately, it was that the quarterback just wasn't there good enough to take them over the top because it was Josh Johnson. And so as long as you have this recurring conversation, you're never going to – to me, the sign of the fact that you have a quarterback is when what we have done this entire offseason stops, right? Like you can say Brock Purdy is the guy. You can say Trey Lance is going to be the guy. But if you have a guy – Jesse Naylor, Vish Kumar, and Larry Krueger don't get on YouTube every freaking day of the offseason and say, what are the Niners going to do at quarterback? What are they going to do with this guy at quarterback? What are they doing at quarterback, right? Like, do you think Chiefs content creators, Chiefs reporters have ever talked about the quarterback position this offseason other than what Patrick Mahomes is doing in his personal life? No. And so I think that you're absolutely right. And that's the point the Niners need to get to. And we can project about them getting to that point with all kinds of different quarterbacks. But when we actually do get to that point, which we are not at now, we will stop talking about this position the way we do. And I think when we do that, then we'll know, hey, they got a guy, whether that's Brock Purdy, whether that's Trey Lance, whether that's somebody else.
It's a weird debate, this whole quarterback debate. Like, oh, do you have a quarterback that's good enough to beat the Josh Allens, the Mahomeses, the best of the best? Okay. That's part of it, but the other part of it is you got to get in that game, right? You can't win the Super Bowl if you don't get to the Super Bowl, and to win that game, you need a level of consistency from your quarterback because the odds are you're not going to get in that game unless you're hosting the conference title game. So that means you kind of got to win all the time in the regular season. So then it comes down to, well, I mean. Yeah, Trey may have the highest end potential if he fulfills every ounce of it, but Brock right now, I think most people would say, and this is all based on what we've seen up to this point. We're going to see more in the weeks ahead, but Brock is played much better football than Trey has. There's no way around that, and so. If you're gonna win the Super Bowl, you got to wind up in the NFC Championship game. You probably got to host that game. Can you host it in any time in the next couple of years if you went with Trey Lance? Don't you think there would be enough inconsistency based on his total, inactivity and lack of playing time and field time? Don't you think it logically makes sense? I mean, anybody could buck the odds, and maybe Trey's that guy. but just based on the fact of his track record of where he's, what level he's coming from and how little he's played, are we now willing to give away? This team's got tons of talent. Brock was easily better than Trey last year. Now the idea of going with Trey, and it's like, well, some people want to, hey, take your lumps. Okay, but you take your lumps, you're not going to be hosting the NFC Championship game, and you may not even be a playoff team.
I would like to say that the one thing about Trey, and the thing I find difficult projecting with this, is we don't know what take your lumps looks like as in terms of wins and losses yet, right? Like last year we were supposed to find that out, and he was hurt, 5 quarters into the year. And a lot of people think that it's going to look like that because they lost to the worst team in football in the Bears. And, it's a fair and accurate projection, but that's where I don't know what the take your lumps is. And I just think back to last offseason, right? If you told me that the 49ers had a midseason situation that they had to insert Brock Purdy, everybody outside of Larry Krueger is like, that's the worst situation. They're not going to the NFC Championship game. How can they do that with the 7th-round rookie? And they did do that, right? Like, we got to see Purdy come in, immediately play well, and we got to see him go through a process, and we realized, you can go to the NFC Championship game with that quarterback. And so that's where, Krug, I understand the point you're making, and the projection based on the limited evidence we have maybe would lean you towards going there. But I can't go there saying that taking your lumps means you can't host an NFC Championship game, or you can't do this with Trey Lance, because we're yet to even see back-to-back complete games from the player and how the team looks in terms of their record, their ability to compete in back-to-back complete games.
It's just quite a projection. You're really projecting if you're, and I get the people that say, hey, look, man, Trey's 6'3", 240, athletic, great arm, great kid. He just needs some playing time and he'll get there. But, how long is that going to take? And are the Niners willing to I don't want to say sacrifice, because I don't even know that they would be sacrificing, but are they willing to take that shot? Are they willing to roll that dice and go with the younger, more inexperienced quarterback? And it might work out great, and they might wind up with the next Mahomes, or they may wind up not making the playoffs. And it's like, I think all those things are possible. Mike drops this one. He says, I'm a Iowa State fan. I watched Brock for 4 years. A lot of his play is sustainable, but 33 points a game is not. Well, all I would say to that is that I don't know how much of the 33 points a game was truly on Brock, because the Niners averaged 20 a game pre-McCaffrey and went 3-3, and then got on a run with McCaffrey and averaged 29 a game and went like what 8-1 or 9-10-1, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So is it really about Brock, or is it more about Christian and their ability to score lots of points with Christian? I also have this one other one that I think is kind of interesting. Hugo De Jesus says, what do you guys think about a dual quarterback system? Not saying in the same game. He says Trey starts one game, Purdy starts the next. It'll confuse the blank out of the other team. It is quarterback-friendly team, right?
It'll confuse the ish out of your team too.
Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
For that one, Hugo. I mean, I like the creativity, and I like thinking outside the box, and that's a way for you to kind of find out if either one of these could be the guy and do it in a outside the box way. But there's no way. Listen, we can go back and forth on what we think and our projections, and I think anybody who's watching this show, unless it's the first time you're seeing any one of us, you know what our thoughts are on this situation. So there's no need to necessarily rehash it. We can answer the question very easily, though. The 49ers clearly are not willing to take that risk, and that's all that matters. They're not willing to take that risk, because if they were, then they wouldn't say things like, well, they were willing to do it last year and go through it, but this year they can't wait. Those things would not come out if they were willing to do so. And they would probably just name Trey Lance the starter if they were willing to do so, if they felt like that was an option. But they're not willing to do that. And so regardless of what opinions are, now, what does that mean for Brock Purdy long term? We can make those projections. Is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? We can talk about all of that, but bottom line is the 49ers are certainly not willing to go through that. Now, that doesn't mean they're not willing to go through playing Trey Lance if they feel like he's improved to a point where maybe some of those growing pains have been worked out. But then that circles us all the way back to the very beginning conversation, which Vish talked about, and I agree with. How do you improve significantly if you haven't played? That's really hard to do.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I would say borderline impossible.
Right. It's the $1 million question. Going back to Jesse, just sorry about that. Just before that question, what were you talking about? It just slipped my mind right here.
What the 49ers want to do. What
right,
they're willing
what the 49ers want to do, right? The dual quarterback system. I wanted to take that a step further. We talk a lot about Brock, trade. I guess there's a couple people that think Sam Darnold. But the point is we debate all three of these quarterbacks. For me, I'll take my how against I am against the dual quarterback system a step further. I think the best case scenario for the 49ers quarterback room next year is less about who and more about whomever gets to start ends up starting the entirety of the season. I think continuity is the number one key. If it's Brock, I want to see Brock get the long leash to go from week 1 to the entirety of the season. I think that's the best case scenario for him. If it's Trey Lance, same thing. Whoever it is, I want them to have the full leash, the full lens. They're the guy. No matter what happens, you're standing by them, barring, hey, the season has gone so catastrophic that we need to go someplace else. But I'm so against the dual quarterback system. I'm sorry. It was a creative idea, but I don't think that works. The old adage is if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. I truly believe in that. And I think that, right now we would probably say that the best option for the 49ers week 1 immediately right now is Brock, right? He's played the best for the 49ers out of the three quarterbacks. Krug, you said that. There's no doubt about that. But for me, whether it's Brock, Trey, Sam, whatever it is, I think continuity is going to be the most important thing for that guy. I think that guy, knock on wood that they get fair injury luck, needs to not be looking over their shoulder. They need to have the full confidence and command that this is their team. And it's something Seattle, I think, by the way, I've talked about this, how much I hate the quarterback competition. And this point just finally crystallized in my head. I've talked about how it never works, except it worked twice for Seattle, both under Pete Carroll. Once they had the Russell Wilson, Matt Flynn competition. I think Russell Wilson's rookie year, they made the playoffs. That was the year they beat Washington and lost to Atlanta in that wild ass game in 2012. And then last year, they made the playoffs after having that Geno Smith-Drew Lock competition. I think the number one thing Pete Carroll did is right after the competition, whoever won it, he immediately empowered him like he was the franchise quarterback. To me, whatever ends up happening in this 49ers quarterback situation, whoever starts week 1, that's a key for me. Empower them like they're the franchise quarterback. Make them feel so confident that they're the guy and, trust what you can do with them this year.
I agree. That the alternative is chaos.
Right.
The alternative is chaos. Let me get 3 supers in, and then I want to get us all on record here. We got this one from Mike Drops with Mansa. He says, quarterback position seems no matter the starter, he's looking over his shoulder if he plays bad. Do you guys think that this can affect the quarterbacks? And Vish, Chicago weather's bad. Worst take from you ever. Good combo, fellas. Chicago weather's not bad. Chicago weather is seasons. You have the summer, the fall, the winter, and the spring. If you don't like seasons, come to San Francisco, and you can just have 58 degrees and foggy every day, January through July. See, I'm defending Chicago weather, but go ahead.
No, this is hilarious to me because this must have been something that I said in passing a long time ago, and Mansa's still holding it against me means he's really got something against that Chicago weather. He's really upset about it.
He doesn't like that one. And we also, this one, if you thought that was good, Mike drops with Mansa again. He's emptying the clip. He says, if the 49ers can't deal with Trey's potential growing pains, is it fair to Brock that fans act as if he won't have any? No team averaged 30 points per game last season. The expectation seems unfair. What do you guys think? It's true. The number one scoring team in football last year over the course of the full year was Kansas City. They averaged 29 a game. The Niners under Brock Purdy averaged 33 a game. Yeah, and I think there'll probably be some growing pains. Give me your guys' comment on that one from Mike Drop.
Go ahead, Jesse.
No, I agree with him wholeheartedly. And I also agree with the other comment, which is regardless of who the quarterback is, they are going to be looking over their shoulder. And, it's funny because Vish, you made a point, and I've said this as well. It's no secret that I would prefer Trey Lance to get a chance and
Mhm.
see what he is before I'm willing to just move on. However, I've also said that if Brock Purdy's your guy, then remove the problem. And the problem would be Trey Lance, unfortunately, meaning you don't want anybody looking over his shoulder. They did that to Trey Lance. They did it to RG3. When I say they, the
To Jimmy.
Shanahans, they've done it to Jimmy. They've done it to every quarterback. So this thing that you talked about where, oh, just buy into whoever it is, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think that's Shanahan. I don't think that's his MO. And I don't necessarily think that he is so sold on any of them that he's willing to take that leap of faith. So I don't foresee that situation happening. And I do see or can see issues if any of the quarterbacks who start play bad. But then again, once you make that move, it's over. It is over. So you have to be very careful with this. If that player that you start is Brock Purdy and you pull him at any point and it's not due to injury, it's over for him. He is
With
done as the starter in San Francisco. Same thing with
right.
Trey Lance.
Right. I think that last part is so important, right? Whomever you pull, given where the roster is and where they are financially and how much older this team is getting, whomever you pull, they're not done for that year. They're done. Like they are done as the starter in San Francisco for an extended period of time if you pull them mid-season. So you're kind of killing them. And again, we're talking about young quarterbacks. Do you want to kill them at 23, 24, 25 years old? I mean, we just talked about Alex Smith. I mean, how many times did Mike Nolan kill him, right? Questioned his toughness when he was playing with the separated shoulder. Offensive coordinator after offensive coordinator. No disrespect to JC O'Sullivan because I like his content, but Mike Martz bringing him as his, just like his son and starting him that year in 2008 was messed up. That should have never happened. 2009, Sean Hill playing over him. Singletary going with Troy Smith, right? How many years did Troy Smith play in the NFL after that? So, like,
How many games did he start after that?
Right. So that disrespect 100% exists. Also, going back to the comment in regards to growing pains, I think he brought up a great point, right? One of my frustrations, I guess, with this offseason is that growing pains are simply just associated with Trey Lance, when growing pains are something that every quarterback goes through in different capacities, right? Like I just mentioned, Mahomes didn't go through growing pains at his young part of his career. He came in established elite right away. He was top 2, top 3 in the NFL. But he had a point in his season, in his career, where he had to learn to be more disciplined in how he played from the pocket, right? We saw the movement, right? The Play Callers podcast covers it, the movement from single shell coverages to 2 high coverages, right? We saw how that affected Mahomes and how he had to learn to play a more patient game. We're seeing with Josh Allen some growing pains and how they're defending him. Joe Burrow, right? There were some growing pains in how defenses defended him. He had to learn to take more efficient and shorter options this year to last year. Last year, he was taking too many sacks and negative plays, trying to push the ball down the field. So we're talking about the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL, and we're talking about individual growing pains that they went through. Now, they were good enough where even when they went through their growing pains, we still viewed them as top 5 players at their position, and that's why they had no chance of being replaced. But I think growing pains exist in some capacity for every quarterback, and as high as we can be on what Brock Purdy did for 8 games, his long-term success, that longevity of him as a starter, we're only going to know how much it is there when he does go through his first sign of growing pains and adversity as a football player, and we get to see whether he's capable of bouncing back and overcoming it and adjusting to how defenses adjusted to him, right? Like Jimmy Garoppolo showed he was capable of bouncing back from losing the Super Bowl and all of that, but he didn't have any adjustment to how defenses decided to stop him. He was a one-trick pony, and if you couldn't stop that trick, he was lethal. If you could stop that trick, he was deer in headlights. And so I think with Brock Purdy, I'm not calling him a one-trick pony, but there's going to be a case, and Dallas exposed it a little bit, where we're going to see a team really study his skill set and have a really good plan for it. And how he responds to that adjustment and all of that will define his longevity. But he's going to have his set of growing pains as a second-year player as well.
No doubt. No doubt. There's almost no way around that. And then how he reacts will determine how successful he is. Brother Bob is trying to go in on me. He says, "Take your lumps" is lazier than dink and dunk. No, it isn't.
Lazy
No, it isn't.
Larry.
No, it isn't. Take your lumps means that a quarterback who's played very, very little, it's unrealistic expectations if you don't think you're going to lose a handful of games with a first-time quarterback who's played 1 year at the FCS level since high school. And if you think that you're going to be the lucky team that just has this 1 year FCS quarterback's just going to be awesome and you're going to win, you're going to host the NFC title game, you're not. So the question is, are you willing to bypass hosting the NFC title game and develop the quarterback? Some people would argue that's the exact thing they should do. Other people would say, no, their team's too developed in other areas to hand the reins over to a quarterback that inexperienced. And I think the 49ers are basically saying that. They're saying, you know what? Last year we were willing to take our lumps early in the year with Trey Lance and maybe lose some games. This year we're not willing to do that. And does that mean Jed's put extra heat on them, or has something changed internally? We're probably never going to get the answer to that, but something has changed as far as their approach to the season. So, but I think dink and dunk is far lazier than taking your lumps. We got this one from Mike who says, "Jesse, got to connect in Pittsburgh if I make it."
Absolutely. If you are in Pittsburgh, come say what's up. No doubt about it.
Are you going to
Jesse,
Heinz Field?
What's that? I'm going to be at Heinz Field. Yeah, I'm going to be in Pittsburgh.
You are?
Yeah.
Look at you. I'm jealous.
Shoot. I might have to come now.
Two gray beard hair says, what rook or Niners quarterback has ever gone 8-0? Debate done. Brock is the truth. All right. Well, I mean, but I agree with Vish that there is something. I spent the last month going through NFL Plus, watching first of all the condensed versions of every start that Brock made, then the all 22 of every start that Brock made, and Brock got away with 25 passes that this year could all be interceptions. 25. I'm not joking. In the Raider game alone, he got lucky 6 times. 5 in the second half. But you know what? He also puts the ball on your hands a lot. A lot. George Kittle had one ricochet off his hands, went into the air. But Brock was fortunate, very fortunate. And as Vish kind of stated, when teams start to say, okay, wait a second, this guy will try to thread the needle in the middle of the field, look for that, and they start kind of honing in on his tendencies, and every player has tendencies, then what? And how does that look? And what are the results of that? And then how does he adjust back to that? One thing I want to get your thoughts on and get everybody on the record here. We got one more.
He wants us on the record.
Brother Bob says, "Isn't it just as lucky to win with Mr. Irreverent?" I think he meant irrelevant. I mean, it's not about Mr. Irrelevant. It's about a 4-year starter at Iowa State. And how good was Iowa State? Well, they went 1-8 without Brock Purdy. So I think Brock probably had a whole lot to do with Iowa State being damn good. All right, before we get in a different direction, let's get on the record here. Jesse kind of said something that kind of, made my ears stand up, which is, hey, if you're watching this, you kind of know where we all stand. And there's a lot of truth in that statement, right? Because we've done lots of live streams and we've talked a lot about the quarterbacks. So I think everybody knows that while I like both quarterbacks, I think Brock Purdy's the better quarterback right now, and I think there's no doubt he should start. And I know there are people that if you watch Grant might say that, he likes Brock, but he thinks that it's not sustainable. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's kind of the direction he's gone. You guys have spoken and put yourself on the record on what you guys think of the quarterbacks. And I get the sense that both you guys like Brock Purdy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Vish, you seem to be more in the line of they should go with Brock, but you like both quarterbacks and you think it's too early to say Trey's, a bust. And Jesse, I get the sense from you that you think they should go with Trey and explore that because of the upside potential of Trey, but you also respect what Brock's done and see the value in the people that are arguing that he should play. Am I kind of stating everybody's position without conflict.
Are we assuming Brock is healthy in this exercise?
I
We're
guess
assuming he's fully
because
healthy.
we don't really know. Yeah, we don't really know. Go ahead.
If the assumption that he's fully healthy, I think you have to 100% go with him. Like you guys brought up the two NBC Bay Area interviews with Steve Young and Alex Smith. I thought the most resounding quote came from the Andrew Whitworth interview when he basically said that let me pull it up. Give me a second.
Nope. He left.
What happened? You will not pull that up.
Magic. That was
Freaking
magic
Whitworth
right there.
said, "That's it. I don't want my stuff on this show. I don't like it. I don't like it."
All right.
Vish,
well, I'll answer the question while
I'm back.
What
I'm back.
happened? You executed yourself.
I closed the page when I accidentally was pulling up the previous page. I closed. I'm not very good at navigating the computer with one hand, Krug, excuse me. But what I was saying was, I think the most. Did you guys hear the Andrew Whitworth quote, or do I have to say?
No,
it
I didn't. I didn't.
Say it.
Okay,
yeah, say it.
So I think the most resounding quote was Andrew Whitworth told Matt Mayoko basically that starting Trey Lance would quote unquote go against the team's confidence in Brock Purdy, and I think that's where the situation is. If he's fully healthy, the level of play he showed on the field, I think a lot of people would start to question Shanahan if you pull that guy for another guy, just because he built up that equity with how he played. Now I don't know if that should be the number one criteria on why he should start, but for this particular team, and given how important unity in this season is, and they need to be behind one quarterback, that's why I think Brock Purdy, if he's 100% healthy, that's the big if. If we are assuming he's 100% healthy, that's why I think he should start. Because I think you can't bench him if he's healthy. You can't do that.
He's accomplished a lot. He accomplished a lot. He won a couple. I think he was like the third or fourth quarterback in the last 50 years to win 2 playoff games in his rookie season. So I mean, what he did this year or last year was impressive. Okay, let's get on the record. Jesse was saying everybody knows how we feel about these guys, and I think people do kind of know how we feel. And I kind of summed up, I think, how we feel. And if I'm wrong, correct me. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Your July 20th, week before training camp, prediction on how this is going to go going into week 1. Is Brock going to win the competition and Trey's going to be the 2, Sam's going to be the 3, and Allen's going to be cut? Is Brock going to win the job and Sam's going to be 2 and Trey's going to be 3? Or is how do you what do you want to see? What are you predicting we will see this summer with the 4 quarterbacks? I think we all are savvy enough to understand that there will be no all 4 quarterbacks, right? Brandon Allen will not be on the Niners practice squad and make $207,000. That's not happening. He's either going to be on this team as the 3rd string quarterback or the 2nd string quarterback, or he's not going to be on this team, but he's not going to be on the practice squad. So he's just not taking an $835,000 pay cut to be the Niners security blanket, no matter how much Kyle Shanahan might wish it so. That's not going to happen. He's either going to make the team or they're going to cut him loose or trade him, and he'll be somewhere else as a 3rd string quarterback. So there is no, hey, they'll keep all 4. But give me your guys' prediction on how you actually think this will go this summer.
I think that it's trending towards Brock Purdy being healthy, and I think if he is healthy, he will start. My assumption, he will be healthy and ready to go week 1, and so he will start week 1. I don't think there's a path for Trey Lance, and I'll throw Sam Darnold in there as well. I don't think there's a path for any other quarterback to start unless Brock Purdy does something that you're not expecting, which means he's either not healthy or he is healthy and he just looks awful. Like he's lost it. He can't get it together. He's making horrible decisions. He just doesn't look like the same player. I think barring anything that he does to pull himself out of the starting position, there's nothing that any other quarterback can do to take that position from him. So I'm going to go with Brock starts week 1. He is the starter. Trey Lance is the backup. And if both those guys are healthy, I think Sam Darnold's off this team one way or another, and Brendan Allen is your third quarterback.
Yeah, I have a very different impression of what I think is going to happen. So I've said before, I've called this quarterback competition fugazi. In a lot of ways, I think it's just a distraction because they don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. And this competition at least makes it seem like, oh, look, we're just, everybody's competing. We're letting it play out on the field. But I think if Brock Purdy gets cleared anytime just before the 2 weeks mark, before the NFL season, this quarterback competition will disappear, all of that. He'll be named the starter, and it'll be like, oh, we were all in with Brock. We told you he was the guy from day one, blah, blah, blah. The only reason they haven't done that yet is because of the injury. And then I think they will try to trade one of Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, ultimately not succeed, get rid of Brandon Allen, and then play the Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard game with Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, where it's like, we love both of them. We have the two best backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Nobody wanted to trade for them, right? What was it reported? The 49ers wanted a mid-round pick for one of CJ Beathard or Nick Mullins, and teams were offering 6th and 7th round picks for those two players, which, by the way, the 49ers got a 6th round pick for Nick Mullins at any point. Wouldn't that be valuable? Is that not crazy? But I think that's what's going to ultimately happen. And I think the new 3-quarterback rule also allows them to waffle the crap out of that situation and not really reveal to us a clear pecking order between those two backup quarterbacks. And I think it'll fluctuate throughout the season, just as it did with Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard in the case that Brock Purdy continues to start.
So you're going
one thing. Well, I just want to throw this out there because you talked about the CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins thing. We saw the Jimmy Garoppolo trade stuff, the Trey Lance potential trade stuff. The 49ers do not know how to evaluate their quarterbacks compared to what the rest of the league thinks about them. That much is clear. So my prediction of Sam Darnold not being on this roster may be really, really hard to come across because if they think he's worth something, it's likely he's not worth anything close to that. So we'll see.
So Jesse's got Brock 1, Trey 2, Allen 3, Darnold traded. Vish has got Brock 1, Trey 2, Darnold
Vish
3.
Vish says we won't find out really.
And Allen cut. Correct? Cut.
Allen cut, but I don't think we're gonna have a definitive answer between.
As far as you're saying, Brock 1 and who knows 2.
Oh right, yeah. We don't want to tell you. We don't.
So every Sunday it's going to be who dresses.
No, because they have the 3-quarterback rule now.
But doesn't the third guy only? I guess he dresses, but he's only active if the other 2 guys are hurt.
Right, but
so you're saying that they'll play games between Darnold and Lance this week. Number 2 is Lance. Next week,
or they'll say one of them really earned it in practice. They did that same thing with CJ Beathard and Nick Mullins.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought that through. I'm going to go with Brock starts. Trey's number 2. I'm with Jesse.
Allen. He's going
Allen's
Allen.
3, and Darnold is in Green Bay. I think Darnold is going to get traded.
I like it.
And here's why. And it kind of dovetails into the next thing I want to get into. I can't see the 49ers with as deep a roster as they have, with so much money in 2024 tied up in so few players. I can't see them the year prior to that avalanche of cap issue just sitting there going, you know what? Yeah, we got all these guys who we're not going to be able to afford next year, but screw it. Let's play $14 million combined for our number 2 and number 3 quarterbacks all year and just make our cap situation worse. I think the way the money is situated, it's going to be Brock's your 1, Lance and Darnold compete for number 2. I think Lance wins that competition quite easily. And then I think people will think, oh, well, Darnold's going to be number 3. And then Allen's going to be number 3, and Darnold is going to be traded. I don't see them paying $14 million to their 2 and 3. That's far and away the most of any team in the NFL. If Trey is number 3, then you're talking about paying your 3rd string quarterback $9 million. Every other 3rd string quarterback in the league's making $1 million. They're going to pay Trey $9 million? I don't buy that. I don't think they're going to trade him.
Here's
I think
my
Trey's
thing,
going to
though.
show
Here's
enough.
my thing, though. If Darnold loses, so the Niners would have to incur that $3.5 million dead cap, right? If Darnold loses the job. And I think a lot of people think, well, they would willingly play that because they paid the $2.5 million for Nate Sudfeld. But in their current cap situation, it's a little different because, like I've mentioned before, Sam Darnold is carrying the 13th highest current cap hit on the 49ers roster. So it doesn't make it easy to move off of it. Now, we can talk about them valuing quarterbacks, but if Sam Darnold loses in an even quarterback competition to Brandon Allen and Trey Lance, nobody's trading for that guy. It's done. His career's done.
I don't think he's going to lose to him. I think they're just going to take the lesser third guy.
Who's going to pay him that contract, giving him the $4.5 million guaranteed plus the incentives?
I think Green Bay. I think Green Bay, Vish, because Green Bay's got Jordan. What's Jordan's last name? Jordan Love, Sean Clifford, and Danny Etling. That's an incredibly cheap room.
Wait,
and Etling and Clifford stink.
Wait, Danny Etling from LSU, who was going to be? I thought he was going to become a receiver.
Yeah, but I mean, Clifford is awful, man. I watch a lot of Penn State ball. He's terrible, and Green Bay's going to have more than just Love. I think they're going to want. I think they'll want Darnold, and I think they're willing to pay him. That'd be my guess. But that's what I'm going with. I'm going with Allen. Allen was number 2 in Cincinnati. There's no way he came here to be number 4. And I think the only way he even came here was probably if they said, "Hey, look, we'll guarantee you'll be the third guy." So, like, hey, we know we can trade we'll trade either Darnold or Trey Lance, and I think they feel like they could move Darnold. I think Lance is going to outperform Darnold. But that brings us to the Albert Breer, because Breer wrote this thing that the Niners have $190 million up against the cap for 2024. If they redo Bosa, you've got Bosa, Debo, Trent, Armstead, Warner, Kittle, Charvarius, Hargrave, McCaffrey, and maybe Ayuk. And he's basically talking about Trey Lance as a cap casualty almost. And then his quote from Breer: "A Lance trade, if he has a strong preseason this year, could create some breathing room. Having both Warner and Greenlaw as off-ball linebackers could be seen as a luxury, so maybe Greenlaw's another guy that could be offloaded." And then he says if CMC shows his age or gets hurt again, it's possibly he's on the chopping block. And then he threw Kyle Juszczyk out as possibly on the chopping block. But see, that one right there, I mean, if you want to get just a lot of people upset, imagine this, guys. We go to camp, we watch this thing, Trey's improved. He looks really improved. They decide to go with Purdy. If they trade Trey, at that point, I could see another team, if Trey plays well, coming to the Niners saying, "Hey, we'll trade for him."
Right.
But what kind of reaction would there be if Trey plays well and they part ways? I think there's a major dust up, pushback, whatever you want to describe it, from the Niner fans. I know they'll be happy that they have, Brock and a good team and this and that, but I think there's enough people who have enough emotional investment in Trey Lance that if he plays well this preseason and they move on from him, I think they're opening up a can of worms that might not be a good thing. I think there's a lot of negativity directed towards Kyle and John, a lot of people questioning that, a lot of people really, just voicing displeasure with that. What do you think? Did you guys see the Breer article where he wrote that? What do you guys think of that? What do you think of the idea of Trey playing well and getting moved?
Jesse,
I mean, it's possible. The thing is, with the quarterback position right now, quarterbacks' values are at an all-time low because every quarterback is healthy across the league. And every team is probably comfortable with their quarterback room. Once you get into training camp and a quarterback goes down, whether that's a starter or a backup, or maybe a backup doesn't play as well as you thought and you're not as sure in your starter, that's when the value starts to go up. So I could see a scenario where Trey's value climbs, but to me, it doesn't seem like the 49ers have enough conviction, or as Lynch would say, are convicted enough that they have their guy long term. They feel like Purdy's trending in that direction, it seems like. I don't think that they have enough conviction to just make that move. That's a ballsy move. You better know for a fact that Purdy is that guy. And to make that decision this early in his career, that would be a monumental mistake, in my opinion. But, crazier things have happened.
It's a major dice roll, right? without any doubt. It's a major dice roll.
The dice roll is twofold, right? You better know Purdy's that guy, and you better know that Lance isn't, right?
Yeah.
Because if you move Lance, you're likely moving him for something that's well below market value. And if he's a guy you just traded a quarterback that you gave up a lot for a lot less, it would be a terrible value proposition. So business-wise, I can't see them doing that, right? They value winning the arrangement in terms of value so much that they held on to Jimmy Garoppolo forever so that they could get a third-round pick that they might not even get if he doesn't pass a physical. So I doubt that they would move Lance just simply because of that, unless they create the situation that you always talk about, Krug, right, where it's so hazy what the return is, and there's a player that's making them individually just a better team right now. It would have to be
Montez Sweat,
right.
It
would have to be something like that.
Don't look over here. Look over here. Look at this shiny object.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, and the other side of that equation of the Breer talk, let's say the Niners are hugged up and they are. I mean, they've got a lot of great players at the top end of their roster. And you know the way the cap works in the NFL. We can debate this, but in reality, if they want to kick the can down the road another year, they absolutely can. You know what I mean? If they want to keep every single one of those guys, they absolutely can. They probably have to restructure a couple guys. So it's not like, they will have to trade a couple of these guys. But of those big time guys, and I'll throw the list again: Juice, Greenlaw, Lance, Ayuk, CMC, Hargrave, Mooney, Ward, Kittle, Warner, Armstead, Trent, Samuel, and Bosa. If you gotta say goodbye to two of those guys at the end of the year, who are you saying goodbye to?
Juice and Armstead, and it's not close. Dude,
that is exactly what I said. I said Juice and Armstead, and it wasn't a hard decision for me. Not that I don't think those guys are great. I think Armstead in a lot of ways is the emotional leader of the locker room. And Juice is right there with them. I mean, you know what I mean? These are very much leadership players, huge guys, but that would be my duo as well. Vish?
So I think Juice is the obvious one, right? I wasn't even a large proponent of re-signing him, not because he isn't an excellent player. He is an excellent player. It's just that he plays 46% of snaps on a given season. He doesn't play any monumental third downs just because of personnel issues. You rarely throw him the football, and he makes a lot of money. Now, of course, the team also likes having him because he brings good optics, right? He makes the Pro Bowl every year as the only fullback. He's the only fullback that makes the All-Pro team, and you can put Pro Bowl and All-Pro in front of him and market him. Also, he's great to the media. But I think that's one that they have an out on the contract. He to me, is the most obvious one. The Armstead one, player for player, I think if we had to go through that list, that's probably the other one I would pick just because they signed Hargrave. I just don't see financially how they could make that decision unless they trade him. It's a big contract to stomach. The out on Armstead was this year. If I remember correctly, next year I think he incurs like a 17. Was the out not?
Because they kicked it down the road. I'm pretty sure it's next year. If they cut him post June, if they cut him post June, they save $18 million next year. They could have.
Okay, then.
Yeah. Because they kicked
never
it down
mind.
the road.
Okay. I forgot. You're right. You are correct. I forgot that they restructured him this offseason. You're right. They kicked it down the road. But then the other two names I would actually throw, I think a lot of people put Debo in this conversation. I think Debo's contract makes him immediately immovable over the next 2 years at least. If we're talking about moving off of Debo, that's a 2024 conversation to me. The other two names are, and this is going to be unpopular, but it's George Kittle. You have an out on the contract. As good as he was last year, there's an injury history there where if Cameron Latu, a draft pick that Scott McClugan was very high on, if he has a strong season and George Kittle has another year where he's banged up, you can't be emotional about that decision. You have to go Bill Belichick, lawyer Malloy, Rodney Harrison there. And George Kittle's contract would allow that to make be an opportunity. And then the other one is Christian McCaffrey. Look, I think Christian McCaffrey is the best skill player on the 49ers offense, but he's a running back. You don't know if you want to give him a second contract. He's already outvalued what they traded for him because they were basically able to recoup all the assets and compensatory picks. So really they lost a second round pick for him. The contract makes sense with him. He's the other one where just because of the age and attrition of the position, his cliff could be next year, right? Like last year could have been his last really great season. He might have hit the wall. Now, I don't want to say that, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, but it's a real conversation. So I would say those are the other two I would hover around the conversation. And then if we really want to start pushing it, maybe we can start some Trent Williams. Is he going to retire kind of talks? Because that would be the other scenario.
And that's worth noting. There's also the pushback that I've been getting when I brought this up in other streams. Hey, Armstead's in a mind of a lot of Niner fans is going to be a lifelong Niner. He's a NorCal guy. He's a Sacramento guy. He's a pillar of the community. He's reading to young children. He's, maybe he would rework his deal. You got to think of that as well. Who's willing to renegotiate, who's not. That's a big part of this equation as well. A couple supers here. They're starting to back up. House of Jello. Vish, appreciate your kindness, promotion, and Shanahan theory. I'm broke, but I have to spend $5 to say that first sentence.
Oh,
but you three together rock. And I think that's good. Two Graybeard Hairs says, how many picks did Peyton throw those first 3 years? Love you, Larry. You're lazy. Thank you. Armchair Quarterback 1 says, thank you, Larry, for the coverage and the big ups to the panel. Here's to no complaints this year about how we should have won by more points. A win is a win. Oh, God, yeah, please. See, that's the other one. When we start critiquing victories, we're officially back in the 90s, the 80s and 90s for the Niners. I mean, that's what it was. Yeah, they beat the Falcons by 10, but, come on, man. They should have won by 17. We can't get into critiquing victories. That that's not good. Wait a second. We got a couple others here. Here we go. Brother Bob, he's still Mr. Irrelevant. It's the loaded team. So it's lazy as hell to just assume we take lumps, a.k.a. lose with Lance, even though we won with Mr. Irrelevant. Brother Bob, I'll push back and say that I love Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, and I think they're both franchise quarterbacks, but they're at dramatically different stages of development, and I think that's undeniable. And that's just my thought on it. I'm not saying that I don't believe in Trey Lance, but I don't think I think if you're thinking that Trey Lance is going to be able to show the kind of nuances that made Brock Purdy successful last year, after playing 1 year since high school, your expectations for Jeff Christensen are probably through the roof.
I think the argument there, though, is that does he have to in order for them to win because the team is so good? So, you get somebody like CMC there that is such a difference maker, assuming health, of course. Seems like every time Trey Lance played, he didn't get George Kittle for whatever reason. There was no CMC. He came later in the year. So you don't have to be as good as Brock right now or on that level right now for this team to continue to win. And that goes back to Vish's point, which I think you acknowledged, by the way, which is we can't say for sure that they would lose. He's going to take his lumps, but that doesn't mean that the team loses as he's taking those lumps. But we also can't say that Brock Purdy's not going to take his lumps. They may be different for sure, but they're both going to take some lumps. Brock, newsflash, I get it. Brock Purdy went 8-0 and looked phenomenal and all. He's going to lose. This is the NFL. He's going to lose games, and he's not going to look good all the time. That's going to happen.
Garoppolo had the 8-0 start to his career, and it was the most hyped up thing going into 2018, and he came right back down to earth week 1 of 2018.
If we're here next year and Brock is still undefeated, that will be quite the story.
Yeah.
Dude, if we're here, if we're here this time next year and Brock is still undefeated, put him in the Hall of Fame. Just put him in there, induct him. Come on.
Seriously.
Well, unless he won game 1 and was out the rest of the year.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
I didn't think of it like that. He's a critical thinker.
Jesse's thinking. Mike drops with Mansa says, biggest threat to the Niners Super Bowl run, Detroit, Dallas, or Philly? I mean, it looks so bizarre to see DET there in this conversation.
Right.
But, Jesse, I know you're hot to trot on Detroit. I would say Dallas? What the fuck? No, it's not going to be Dallas. Dallas. I would say it's Kansas City. It's Mahomes, man. It's Mahomes.
It's whoever out of the AFC, but if it's who's going to stop you from getting there potentially, I still think that team is Philly. Dallas, man, I don't know. I feel like I'm the guy that falls for it every year. They definitely got a better roster. I just can't get with the coaching staff. I'm sorry.
McCarthy.
I'll go with Dallas, and then my other one is Seattle. Seattle always plays this team really well. Pete Carroll always has this team playing the 49ers really well, so it's a tough matchup. Dallas doesn't play the 49ers well, but I think Dan Quinn is the toughest individual matchup with that talent on defense for Shanahan in particular. And I think when you have a player the caliber of Micah Parsons on that defense that can make game-changing plays at any point, I think it becomes a tough matchup. Dallas has a lot of talent. I think Philly, while the talent level of their team remain the same, I think the reduction in experience is going to lead to some growing pains, right? Our key word of the show. I think Philly's going to have some growing pains for those young players that they're reinserting and replacing a lot of very, very accomplished and good veteran players there.
The phrase that pays. That should be our new thing, guys. We'll do this behind the scenes every week. We'll come up with a phrase or a word that we have to mix in throughout the whole show, and we all have to try to do it. I think that's what will make the show interesting. What and people have to figure out what the word or phrase is.
I mean, I think we already know the phrase for today.
For
Kevin
sure.
Krueger told Larry, he said, Larry, we got to 20,000 subscribers. If you don't say salacious on today's episode, I'm going to be really mad. And then so Larry came on here and he was like 10 seconds in, he was like salacious.
Can I tell you one of my favorite radio segments of all time? The late Ralph Barbieri debating with Ted Robinson over Ted. Ralph asked Ted if Ted, who was doing Pac-12 ball at the time, could get Tom Hansen, I think the commissioner of the Pac-12, on Ralph's show. He's like, Ted, come on, man, you know Tom Hansen. Could you get Tom Hansen on my show? I'd really appreciate it. You know Tom. Come on, Ted. And Ted's like, he's like, Ralph, I'm shocked. Somebody with your perspicacity doesn't have the ability to get a guy like Tom Hansen on your show. I'm shocked. You're right, Ted. I've got great perspicaciousness. I've got great perspicacity, and people have talked about my perspicacity through the years, and I am perspicacious, but I don't know him, and I really want him on the show, and you know him, and I don't. Will you get him on, please? Please, come on, Ted. Oh, Ralph, I mean no harm. Don't take this wrong, but I just think there's somebody with great perspicacity like yourself that you would have this contact. It really is shocking. You're right. You've said that over and over. I'm perspicacious. Everybody says that. You're right, but I don't have. They debated perspicacious versus perspicacity. It was awesome. And like they went to
into Cartman from South Park there.
They went to a caller. They went to a caller, and he's like, let's take a call, Ted. Great, Ralph. Let's take a call. But let's go to Bob. Bob's in San Bruno. He's like, hey, what's up, guys? Ralph, what are you guys even talking about? I don't even know what you guys have been. What is a perspicaciousness and perspicacity? Oh, it was awesome. It was some of the greatest radio of all time.
Oh, we're doing this. All I heard out of that whole thing is that's what we're doing. So get ready for it all season long. All I heard
is that Larry Krueger has a killer Eric Cartman impersonation.
That's my Ralph Barbieri.
He wants cheesy poofs.
This guy left me 6 voicemails on how I should get through Disneyland. Okay, Craig, look, you're in Toontown, and what you do is you take the thing right behind the tram, and that's where the Disney princesses stand. And then what you got to do is you got to go to downtown Disney, and there's a place for breakfast called Goofy's Kitchen, and you're gonna love it, and it's a little pricey. Oh my God!
Is this what this guy really sounds like? Are we close here?
Oh my gosh. He's no longer with us. But he's a good guy. The great Ralph. And I told my boss, I'm like, Ralph left me 6 voicemails last night all about Disneyland. And the boss was like, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. And then he starts telling people in the hallway, hey, Barbieri gave Krueger a 6-bagger. A 6-bagger on what, Krueger? I'm like, Disneyland. Fucking Disneyland. Can you believe Ralph talking Disneyland? And so we're sitting there playing it. It's like, and then you got to make sure you get a Toontown. And then he just goes, boop. And then the next one, now you have another voicemail. Ralph, this is Ralph again. Sorry I got cut off. I was talking about Toontown. I was mentioning the Disney princesses, and you got to make sure you go to the Matterhorn. And oh my God, boop! Oh yeah, Krueger, it's Ralph again. I promise this is the last message. I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to be a jerk to you. Don't take it wrong, but I just want to make sure you have a good time. I had a great time. Tate had a good time. Oh my God, boop! Krueger, I promise this is the last one. I promise you gotta go to California Adventure. Get the Daily Hopper and make sure you get a fast pass. And if you don't get the fast pass, you're really gonna waste your time. Oh,
Krueger,
dude.
at least have him wine and dine you first before hitting your line that many times.
Oh, he's like the old Italian guy who ran Cambiar at the time. I was like, can you believe this fucking guy? Barbieri left a fucking 6-bagger. It was a 6-bagger on Krueger's voicemail. Oh, that's just awesome. Oh, man. All right. Okay, I digress. Mike drops.
Krug.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, your impersonations are so unbelievably spot on. Do you have a Shanahan/Lynch impersonation that's just like been worked up and you can manifest it right now?
No, but I used to, when Chip Kelly was the Niners coach, I used to be able to do Chip to an absolute. That's why we ran the ball there. I mean, and you're right. That's why I'm glad that you asked me about that, because the reason we ran the ball there is because we thought we could run there, and if we didn't get the run there, we weren't going to go first down. We could get a second down, maybe a second down. We're thinking maybe the third down. We're going to pass on third. I mean, Chip Kelly in post game was rapid fire, man. He was just unbelievable. And then, of course,
like a guy at an auction.
Trent Baalke. Trent, I got a real concern about your linebackers. You got Gerald Hodges. You got Bowman off an ACL. You don't have a whole lot else at linebacker, Trent. Are you concerned at all?
Larry, you think you know a lot about football. And let me tell you something, Larry. We like our linebackers. All right, we got a good group of linebackers. And let me tell you something. Gerald Hodges may have torn his ACL maybe twice. But you know what? I still got hope that Marcus Lattimore is going to be something, baby. And you think you're all big and high and mighty on your KMBR. But let me tell you about Marcus Lattimore.
Oh man. It's classic. Trent Baalke.
Meanwhile, that was worst linebacking core of all time.
That was the year. So we get in the elevator, me and John Lund. The Niners had given up 7 consecutive 100-yard rushing days. Reuben Drones went for 100. Jacquez Rogers went for a 100. Belial Powell busted their ass for 100.
Yes.
We get in the elevator, and I'm like, and the Niners are getting beat by the Jets. It's like minute left. It's me, John Lund. Trent Baalke walks in. I go, hey, what's going on, Trent? How you doing? Just out of habit, just saying, how you doing? And he looks at me, and then John Lund starts laughing, and I go, you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to, because they were losing to the fucking Jets at home. It was a classic moment of uncomfortableness, but yeah, there you go, Trent Baalke.
We like our linebackers.
I was watching a little Arrested Development. There's a little bit of Marty Funkhauser in Trent Baalke, by the way. Mike drops with Manta says they analyze quarterback money by room, not depth, in my humble opinion. Okay. And we got this one. Brother Bob says, if Larry says someone's traded, they're staying. Pig in a pickle. All right. Okay.
I love how he always does the pig in the pickle and he uses the emojis. It's so good.
Yeah.
Yes. Glass half full guy. Any chance Yannick Ngakoue gets signed by the 49ers, or do they not have the money to sign him to what he wants? You know what, guys? I was thinking about this the other day. I think that the Niners might be able to, after the Bosa signing, they might be able to get a really good edge rusher piece in addition for peanuts. Think about it. You're on a line with, you're unsigned. It's late July. You can join a line that has Bosa, Hargrave, Eric Armstead, and Drake Jackson, and potentially be a third down rush specialist on this line. I mean, I think people are speculating $9-10 million. No. I think they might be able to get a guy like Ngakwe for like 5. And if I'm Ngakwe and I'm his agent, I'm going, hell yes, I'm going to San Francisco. I got Bosa and I got Armstead and I got Hargrave and all these guys. I got an offense that's going to put up points. I'm going to be leading in the fourth quarter. Let's go have a monster year and take it to free agency next year. I think there's a chance the Niners may get a deal on another edge rusher. What do you guys think?
I think that definitely exists there for sure. What I think the 49ers are doing, and I really like what they're doing, because there's kind of an abundance of those guys out there. There's Clowney, there's Houston, there's
Clowney, I forgot
Yannick.
about Clowney.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys out there. So I think what they're doing is being patient, and I think that's the smartest thing they could do. You're right. There's going to be more money that frees up when Bosa is signed. However, what if it's not pass rusher that they need? What if they feel comfortable with pass rusher? It could be anything. I mean, Luter was a guy that we thought might fight for a starting position. Some people thought.
I did.
He's now out. Who knows? What does the depth look like? Ambry Thomas, are you going to have to rely on him? Do you want to rely on him? Maybe they get 4 games into the season and it's a whole different position we're not even thinking of that they need help at. So I would say remain flexible as long as you can. Diagnose this team. If you feel comfortable going into the season, diagnose it for as long as you can up until that trade deadline and either take a lopsided money trade or sign somebody that may be available, but try to hold out as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, so I think Yannick is going to wait, right? Because if the moment one premium edge player gets injured this offseason, Yannick Ngakoue is going to make a lot of money for 1 year. Or Jadeveon, maybe not Jadeveon Clowney because of the injuries, but Yannick Ngakoue still has a chance at getting money this offseason. So it's in his best interest to hold out. I think at this point, the conversation about Yannick Ngakoue is more about whether somebody gets injured, because I think if nobody gets injured, I can't see the 49ers making that move. The Niners have shown that they don't like sacrificing getting high-priced veteran players to stick in front of their young, developing, and ascending players and stunting their growth. They don't like having those guys necessarily there. Like last year, they cleared decks for Hufanga when they thought that was going to be his ascension, and they didn't bring in a veteran safety to play in front of Hufanga, right? They brought Tayshaun Gibson once Jimmy Ward got hurt, but the plan was always to start Hufanga. I think they're going to give Drake Jackson, a guy who they invested a second-round pick, that same chance. So I think that there actually, I want to amend my statement. There's going to be 2 things. One, if Drake Jackson has a terrible offseason, it'll turn into the chance they gave Dante Pettis, they'll give that same exact chance to Drake Jackson. So they'll give him the full chance to be a starter. If he has a Dante Pettis-like offseason, like Jesse said, we'll see him make a move for an Emmanuel Sanders-type player at edge rusher at some point to save the fact that he has a bad season. But if he ascends, I can't see them going for a Yannick Ngakoue or somebody like that to make them slightly better for this year. That's not how they ever conduct their business. They don't want to have that kind of money on the books that way.
Look at Vish amending a statement an hour and 33 minutes into a live stream. I mean, we're amending things now. Okay, let me hit one more super.
Well, you said salacious, so I couldn't just say correct.
I defer to the speaker. I'm thinking of Congress now. 808 Niners says 1999, thank you. And he goes, sup, guys, and congrats, Larry, on 20K. I feel that everyone loves Brock Purdy because he's better than Jimmy, but that shouldn't be the standard. I don't think that Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback, but he could win a Super Bowl with this team. Wow, now we're getting into, you don't think he's a franchise quarterback, but he can win a Super Bowl. So he's going to reach the pinnacle of the sport, but he's not a franchise quarterback. It's not like we've never seen a non-franchise quarterback win a Super Bowl, but I hear what you're saying. You guys got a thought on 808 Niner there?
I don't disagree with them. I mean, certainly, I'm the guy in the offseason that had a similar take and said that Brock could be Mr. Right now, but not Mr. Right. And I think I still stand by that. I think that's a real possibility.
Vish, got a thought?
It's too early to make definitives on Brock Purdy's ceiling or his career for me. I'd like to see him next year before I decide whether he can or can't be a franchise quarterback. And then even on being better than Jimmy, he played better than Jimmy for a stretch because he offered something off schedule. But Larry, just like you said, you went back and watched all of the Brock games from last year and you saw the throws that could have
Easily 20 to 25
right?
bad throws, easily.
If you go back and watch the Jimmy experience, and I did that earlier this offseason sometime in March, Jesse, you were talking about the video you posted, right? For 10 throws from Brock Purdy that Jimmy Garoppolo could never make, but the irony was that all 10 throws were made by Jimmy Garoppolo, and people didn't get the irony. If you go back and watch Garoppolo last year, I mean, he really was playing at the highest level we had seen him play as a 49ers quarterback. He was playing very, very well before he got hurt, right? So it's too early to say anything that way on Brock Purdy. It's too early to be positive or negative. That's kind of my thing. Other than just being satisfied with the fact that, you know, he did something a 7th-round rookie has never done.
I don't know. I'm going to push back a little bit. I don't think it's too early to be positive because he's already outplayed the contract. So I don't think
fair enough.
But I also don't think it's negative to phrase it the way that I phrased it. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to say he's for sure this and for sure that. That's not what's being said. It's my opinion is that's a real possibility. I could see a scenario where the 49ers do win a Super Bowl and Brock Purdy is also not your franchise guy. I've seen it happen in the NFL a few times. So it doesn't mean that it can't happen again. Now, am I predicting that to happen? No, I don't think so. I mean, I think the 49ers are going to need that guy to eventually win the Super Bowl. Whether Brock Purdy is or not, time will tell. But I could see a scenario, certainly. Yes, absolutely. I could see that scenario playing out potentially.
If that's the case, then I agree with you.
Yeah. I just want to make sure because a lot of people, it's funny because I hope people are listening to what Larry's saying right now. Larry has been the one guy who has championed Purdy more than anybody. And he's told you on multiple occasions tonight that there were easily 20 to 25 throws in an 8-game time span that could have been intercepted, which he's also saying that means there's a possibility that his interception percentage or turnover throws or plays can go up because that film is out there. It's funny because you've been told these same things by people you may not like their take on, but they've been telling you this. So hopefully coming from Larry, it now makes sense.
We're an hour and 37 minutes into this. Let's hit some quick hitters and then we'll call it a night.
Quick hitters between the three of us.
Yeah,
I know.
great.
I know.
Good luck.
I know. Okay, give me a player or two that in your guys' mind needs a big camp to avoid being cut. Who's going to be cut, but they need a big camp, and if they have it, they won't get cut.
Ambry Thomas. There's one. Danny Gray. There's another. Ty Davis Price. There's a third.
Yeah, dude. Yes, and yes to all of those. Completely agree.
I'm going to go tight end. I'm going to go Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelly. I think those guys. I think the way last year ended with Croft, I saw this stat this week, guys. I could not believe it. I had to double check it, and I went and double checked it, and sure enough, it's true. Guess what the number of receptions 49er tight ends had last year, outside of Kittle?
I'm going to say
4.
0.
7.
4.
But still, that's so low. Anything under 15, it was your second tight end and your third tight end and every other tight end in your roster combined for 7 catches in a 17-game season. That's not good. So I would say Warner and Dwelly better show, or Braden Willis and Cam Latu get those jobs.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. There are other players that I think might not get cut, but definitely need to have big camps, though. I think Javon Kinlaw fits under that umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think Elijah Mitchell also fits under that umbrella.
Hey, by the way, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen too.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Sam Darnold is, Trey Lance as well. Yes.
I think Elijah Mitchell is a Shanahan favorite. I don't know. I know
He's
what you're
got to
saying.
stay healthy
gotta,
though, Krug. If
gotta stay
he's
healthy, and
hurt again,
and there's other good backs.
Yeah,
They got a bunch of other good backs.
I think the thing with Mitchell that gives him such an advantage is that his speed is different from anything else the Niners have on the offense. And even McCaffrey, right? I thought McCaffrey had arguably the best season of his career last year. Look at the difference in the gear 2019 McCaffrey has versus the gear that McCaffrey had last year, right? McCaffrey was caught from behind a few times. I mean, go watch
always
the Niners.
Been caught from behind.
The Niners game, he had a little bit more something in 2019. For example, the Niners game, they blew him out. He had those 2 big runs where he ran by the entire defense. And Tart and Ward were pretty good at running people down, having good angles to the ball. I think he had a little bit. Jesse, you're right. He was never 4-3 all day, but I think he's 4-5 today, and I think he was 4-4 in 2019, if that makes sense. And I think Mitchell having that 4-3 speed. And we just brought up Danny Gray as somebody who, hey, is he going to make the team? Like, what's going on there? I think Mitchell has an element that's irreplaceable right now versus everybody else that we have mentioned. There is a similar skill set or a better skill set on this roster already existing, and they need to do something drastic. Otherwise, the writing's on the wall.
All right, here's another one. The Niners have had an unbelievable run the last few years with undrafted free agents. You can argue they do better with undrafted free agents sometimes than their day 1 picks or day 2 picks. They have 11 undrafted free agents. Ronald Awatt, running back, UTEP. Jack Coletto, fullback, Oregon State. Joey Fisher, O-lineman, guard from Shepherd. Deshaun Jameson, corner from Texas. Kalen Laburn, running back from Marshall. Corey Luciano, offensive lineman from UW. Ilm Manning, O-lineman from Hawaii. Spencer Wage, defensive lineman, North Dakota State. Avery Young, safety, Rutgers. They've already cut Shea Wyatt and Mariano Sori-Marin. Of the undrafted guys, give me an undrafted guy that you think is gonna shine and make the biggest impact of that group. Who do you like?
Spencer Wagey. I love Spencer Wagey. Been a big fan of Spencer Wagey. No, I'm kidding. That's your guy. I know that. But I actually would probably just say him because you have hyped him up so much to me over the course of the last month and a half that I'm a believer. So I'm on the Spencer Wagey wave, but that's completely your take and your point. I'm just there because of you. I trust your opinion.
Jesse, you got one?
What's interesting with undrafted guys, for the most part, when a team is this talented, and what you've seen from the 49ers is an undrafted guy makes an impact, but it's usually not till year 2. It's like they stash them, they develop them, then they make an impact. And
that's a good call.
Man, I think there's 3 guys that could fit that outside of Wagey or Wagey. I think Isaiah Winstead could fit that. I think Jack Coletto. We talked about Juszczyk being gone next year. I think he can fit that. And the one guy that I think could potentially fit that this year, depending on what happens with TDP, is Laybourne.
Really powerful lower body. Had 300 plus carries last year. If you're a college football fan, Marshall beat Notre Dame in South Bend, and it was because of Laybourne.
Yep.
That they
so
won.
You
that
think
game.
Laybourne can basically be Jordan Mason to TDP's Trey Sermon?
Potentially, yeah, I do.
Of course,
the odds on the 49ers, that's a great bet.
I like a lot of these guys
over the draft pick.
I like a lot of them. I really do. I think there's a lot of good ones here. But the guy, as far as I'm really excited about Wagey because I did the interview with him and I really like the kid and I see some real exciting traits. He's got the same 10-yard split as Aldon Smith. I mean, that right there at 300 pounds. And then when you watched him in practice, supposedly he tore up the knee a few years ago. He's not wearing a sleeve. The motor's off the charts. He's running 45 yards down the field. But then when you watch some of the one-on-one drills, his hand placement, it's very veteran-like. You're sitting there going, wait a second. This guy's a defensive end. He looks like a defensive tackle. He looks like a defensive end. I would not be surprised if he makes the team. But as far as the guy who's going to make the biggest impact, I'm going to go Deshaun Jameson. Deshaun Jameson is a tremendous athlete. 38-inch vertical. He's not the biggest corner, but he's 5'10", 190. He's not ridiculous. He's not 5'6". and he ran 4.41. He's got a 3.90 short shuttle that shows great quickness. He goes really low against the run. He looked awesome in the mini camp. I mean, as the thing went on, he was looking like sometimes him and Womack were looking like the best corners on the field. So I'm going to say, especially now with the injury to Luter, that makes it a slam dunk for me. I'm going to go with Jameson as the guy who I think not only makes the roster, but I think he's a key player for them. I know what Jesse's saying, though. The Niners usually they draft these guys. They get a good eye for them, then they kind of stash them. And I think there'll be some guys like that this year, Tay Martin and some others, Kalia Davis. But I think Jameson actually is the exception to the rule. I think he winds up, you need corners, and this guy's played 5 years at Texas. He's ready to go. He's ready to play, and I think he'll
was
be
he the one that was given Allen Fitz in those practices?
He looked in the final practice like the best corner on the field. I mean, the guy's breaking up plays. You got guys shooting off the sideline, grabbing him and hugging him and, celebrating him. I mean, he really opened people's eyes.
That's awesome.
So that's the guy I'll go with. Couple last ones here. This was a Pro Football Focus question that I thought was really interesting. They said, name a player, not necessarily a Niner, but if you want to go with a Niner, that's fine. Name a player who's going to jump into superstardom this year in the NFL. Somebody who's going to take it to, and that's a hard thing to quantify, right? It's like what's stardom compared to superstardom compared to, these are the guys they had listed. Treylon Burks, Christian Watson from Green Bay, Chris Olave, Cam Taylor-Britt, the corner for Cincy, Jerry Jeudy, Derek Stingley, Kyle Pitts, Elijah Moore, James Cook, John Mechie, who's now healthy, the Alabama receiver with the Texans, Garrett Wilson, Tariq Woolen, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, Aiden Hutchinson, Nico Collins, Sky Moore, Sauce Gardner. Or you can do like my late father used to do. I'm going to order off the menu. Go ahead. Is there anybody? We hated that too. Like, Dad, just order something that's on the menu. Do you guys have? I noticed I didn't see. Could you possibly make? But go ahead. Who stands out? Who's going to emerge as a superstar? Teasy says Olave or Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think offense is easier to go with because if you play like wide receiver and you get 1,200 yards, you're definitely recognized. I'm going to go with somebody. I'm going to go off the menu, by the way. And maybe this is my Oregon Duck fandom. I don't know. You tell me. But I watched this player down the stretch last year absolutely wreak havoc. And that's Kayvon Thibodeau. I think with the Giants, he could be a real problem this upcoming year for a lot of teams. And I don't know if his sack numbers are going to get there. That's usually what's going to push you into superstardom. But when you watch him play the final quarter of the season into the playoffs, oh man, he was in the backfield on repeat, causing problems. They started to have to game plan for him down the stretch in a big way. So I think that's going to continue.
I'm going to go with Kyle Duggar, the safety in New England. I think he's already close to being a superstar. I think he's going to be the best safety in the NFL next year.
Wow. Love it.
I'm going Jets tandem, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. And maybe Sauce is already there.
I think Sauce has arrived.
Yeah, I think Garrett Wilson's the easiest answer because I think his rookie wide receiver season might have looked a lot better with some better quarterback play, and now he's getting Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I just think Garrett Wilson is just I thought, I wasn't an Olave guy. When I saw the Buckeye guys, I was like, oh, Garrett Wilson, man. Garrett Wilson is – and also rookie receivers rarely do anything, and you're right. Now he's got Rodgers. I think Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner would be my two calls. I'll give you one other.
Tariq Woolen, by the way. Tariq Woolen, we saw him ascend towards last year. I don't think they've put him on that list yet, but I think he was nearly as good as Sauce for a big chunk of that season.
I was going to go same secondary, different guy. I'm going to go Devin Witherspoon.
Witherspoon, yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
I think
too.
Witherspoon might be one of the best players I saw.
I like
all
Christian
year.
Gonzalez too. Not to go for another
Yes.
New England guy. That was an Oregon guy as well in terms of his steal.
Yep.
And then the other one, if he didn't get suspended, he would have probably been my answer. I also don't necessarily love his situation, but I loved Jameson Williams when he came out of the draft. I think Jameson Williams is a star receiver that was hurt last year coming off the ACL that happened
Now
at
he's
the end of his
suspended.
Alabama career. But then, this gambling issue. Like, Dan Campbell, why aren't you telling these people the rules about gambling? Like, we watched Hard Knocks, man. See,
I'll give you one more that I really like. With Calvin Ridley coming back from the gambling,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say Ridley. I'm going to say Drake London. I think Drake London with a year
Calvin
in an
Ridley's in Jacksonville.
That's right. He's in Jacksonville. But I still like.
Yeah, they traded him.
I still like Drake London in year 2. I think Drake London, because he rookie receivers struggle, and I know Ritter's not a great quarterback, but I just think Drake London is just such a productive player.
I'll give you one last one.
Yeah.
Chicago Bears running back Khalil Herbert.
The
Khalil Herbert
Herbert
is a fantastic runner. Not great at anything else, but he's a fantastic runner. They're going to be a run-heavy offense. I think he can put up some yards.
What about Brees Hall?
I'm just nervous about the ACL, man.
Yeah, I know.
But Kenneth
I
Walker,
really like him.
Kenneth Walker is one I would put there.
I would go Brees
I know
Hall.
Larry loves Kenneth
I would go
Walker.
Brees Hall, but I don't like Iowa State guys.
Yeah.
And I'll never back anybody from Iowa State.
What about Walker?
No, Brees Hall. Brees Hall was
Iowa State.
Yeah,
Iowa State.
You said Iowa State. I was thinking Ohio State.
Do you guys play fantasy?
Yes.
No.
Give me a fantasy player. Now I'm going to give you the top 10 in fantasy according to the fantasy draft I'm looking at. Justin Jefferson, Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. Those are the top 10. The second 10 are Nick Chubb, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Saquon, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Tony Pollard, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh Jacobs, Garrett Wilson. You got the first pick in the fantasy draft. Who do you want?
Well, I'm a big running back guy, so I'm probably going to go running back. And every league's PPR now. I mean, that's standard at this point. Probably going CMC. No, CMC catches so many passes, man. He catches so many passes, especially if Purdy's the starter. You're going to get 5 points a game just from catches. I go CMC.
Yeah, for me, the first pick is 100% CMC. When I used to play fantasy, I was a big hater of taking rookie running backs, but I think Bijan Robinson would be a guy I would target very early in fantasy this year. And then the last one is Cooper Kupp. If we're talking top 3 picks, PPR league, as long as Cooper Kupp stays healthy, Cooper Kupp is catching 150 passes next year. They have nowhere else to go with the ball. Yeah.
True.
I'm going Jamar Chase, but I'll tell you, the guy that I'm keeping my eye on this summer is in this list would be Jonathan Taylor, because now you're also got the ridiculous quarterback there. And if you got that quarterback
on that same page,
you got Richardson. Yeah. Teasy says, Teasy's mentioning that as well. Where's Teasy? You go, there we go.
CMC.
He says Jonathan Taylor is going to be great alongside Anthony Richardson. Do you guys believe Anthony Richardson's going to have a big year, a mediocre year, or a bad year?
I think he's going to have the kind of year that you would expect any young raw quarterback to have. So there's going to be flashes of fantastic, flashes of terrible. It's just going to be the process of in between. How sustainable is what he's doing, and how correct is it in terms of projecting growth for him year 1 to year 2, right? Like, a lot of people saw some issues in Zach Wilson that scared them even coming into this year after his rookie year. So it'll be about evaluating those middle plays with Anthony Richardson and seeing if the process works, because the athleticism is going to work. He's going to have a couple of plays that are just like the whoa plays of the NFL that year or next year.
Yeah, and I think some people are going to be pleasantly surprised, and it's funny because the Colts came out and said this, but I was telling Vish this before the draft process. One, I think it was the best fit he could have had. I think Steichen is the best fit for Anthony Richardson, and two, I think his pocket presence and his poise in the pocket is a lot better than what people want to discuss. In fact, I think of all the quarterbacks that came out this year, I think he was the best in the pocket at standing tall, climbing the pocket on a consistent basis, and delivering his throws. So I think that that's going to surprise some people as well.
And his explosiveness plays into that too. His
Mhm.
explosiveness comes in two ways. It's explosive as a runner, but he's also an explosive mover within the pocket in terms of how he accelerates to create space. He's not slow-footed within the pocket, right? The contrast to this is like a Colin Kaepernick or a Justin
He's got
Fields,
suddenness.
right? Guys
Yeah.
that run really well, but you put them in the confined space of the pocket and they're not the most agile and elusive. He's exceptionally explosive, agile, and elusive.
Brother Bob says, back. My kid's in bed. Let's go another hour. Pig in a pickle. No, we're not going another hour.
I love how this Brother Bob is like playing a slow play of poker here. He's just bleeding you out $2 at a time with the pig in a pickle. $2 pig in a pickle. $2 pig in a pickle. $2 pig in a pickle.
Seriously, he wants attention. Brother Bob says Larry's trading Kevin Krueger. Book it. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and then this one from earlier tonight. Anyone else notice how much Andy Reid let his team have input?
I'm glad we came back to this. And it wasn't only that. The other thing that really stood out to me is, and I was texting with Ryan and Grant about this earlier today because I watched the final episode today, and that was where I watched the final 2 episodes today, finally, and that was where the ankle sprain happened for Patrick Mahomes. The way that Andy Reid was so concerned about Patrick Mahomes and so willing to just remove him from that game to protect himself, man, I couldn't have been more impressed with the way that he handled that situation. Now, obviously, Patrick Mahomes ended up coming back. He was very stubborn and was not going to come out of that game for a long period. But even Andy Reid was like, listen, you're at least getting an X-ray. You have to do that. I'm taking you out of the game. That's what we're going to do. I love that. And that's in contrast. The reason that I'm so impressed with that is also listening to the other podcast that's been popular over the last week or so, where RG3 came out and said he wishes somebody would have protected him from himself, talking really about the Shanahans in that scenario. I love to see that from Andy Reid. So not only the play calls on Wednesdays and allowing them to install their own things and giving them that autonomy, but also protecting his quarterback the way that he should. I'm so impressed with Andy Reid.
Yeah, I was very impressed too for similar reasons, right? It's when you're that good of a team, it's really hard to maintain that air and freeness that the Chiefs play with. I think some of that is Mahomes. He has a natural just confidence that allows him to do anything and everything and be able to respond to whatever the reaction of it is. And then I think a lot of that is Reid too. Reid, for being such a detailed-oriented coach, didn't come across as uptight. And I think oftentimes both of those two things get conflated into one, where usually the guys that are the sticklers for the biggest details are usually very uptight in their delivery about it. Reid had this incredible ability to deliver a message, but deliver in a message in a very endearing way where he can nag his players and his players don't mind being nagged. And I think that there was special qualities there, right? So much of Andy Reid's career, I feel like, has been about the mad scientist on offense, right? What he did with Kevin Cobb, what he did for Donovan McNabb. Ty Detmer had a career, AJ Feely. Like, how many different quarterbacks did Andy Reid build a little career for? And it's so much about what he does on offense, how creative they are, how they are outside of the box. But the sustenance to have two different franchises where Andy Reid built, right? Philadelphia still philosophically is following everything that Andy Reid built there in 1999. It's just they have done it with different coaches because they realized the philosophy works. They just needed a new voice delivering the philosophy. And now look at what he's built with the Chiefs. I think his ability to communicate, his ability to lead, his ability to kind of be Machiavellian in the sense that everybody likes him, but they also know who the boss is. I think those are things that are never discussed with Andy Reid. So I thought it was really cool to see that and see how even at such a stark age difference between him and his players, he has the age difference to give him equity and respect, but he's also able to blur that line to be able to have a conversation that's man to man.
Andy Reid to me is just, to me, the way he utilized Kadarius Toney where the Giants could not. And you could argue Kadarius Toney had two of the biggest plays in the entire Super Bowl.
If we're talking about star emergence too, by the way, our previous topic, he's a sleeper I would throw there.
Kadarius
Sorry
Toney.
to interrupt you. Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney's a good one. All right, guys. Great stream. Outstanding stuff. What's this one? We got this one.
No, quick, hurry. We got to be done
916.
before 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah, we did see that before the show, by the way.
If Larry trades Kevin, the show falls apart. Oh, wait. Here we go. G code. If the rookie kicker struggles, any chances they sign Robbie Gould?
I don't think
Not
so.
signing Robbie Gould was one of my favorite things they did this offseason. I'm not going to lie. Even if that includes taking a rookie kicker in the 3rd round. I'm sorry. Like, I generally love every person on the 49ers. Robbie Gould's interviews were one of the toughest listens I've ever had in the last 5 years. Like, the way he would break down kicking, while it was interesting because of the science to it, but just how full of it he was a little bit was somewhat annoying to listen to. And then him wanting to go back to Chicago after the 2018 and having that entire contract dispute, like being a big diva, was a little bit annoying for me too. So yeah, I'm hating on Robbie Gould. Palatine zone.
All right, guys, great stuff. Next Thursday, whose house? Vish's house? Jesse's house?
Jesse's house.
My house, I think. Yep.
All right, Jesse. All right, Vish. Good stuff. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle, New York style Italian sausage. New sponsor on the bottom, Marin Auto Glass. We got a new gambling sponsor coming up. Training camp starts in a week. Thanks to everybody who was involved tonight. 317 people over 2 hours into this thing. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, get in.